Hello and welcome to PharmaTelevision News Review here at BioEurope Spring in Turin, Italy in 2014. On this show, I have Steve Hurst, who is the CEO of a company called Savant HWP, which stands for Health, Wellness and Prevention, and you're based in San Carlos in California. Welcome.
Thank you. It's nice to be here.
Your company is focused on addiction. Could you tell us a little bit about how your company is approaching addiction?
Let me give you a little background on the company. Our lead project is in addiction medicine right now. The company itself is disease and technology agnostic. We're a little bit different in a sense. So we look for undervalued projects where we see an opportunity to create a lot of value through preclinical and human development through human proof of concept. So we work in a very focused area within our industry. The lead project is on a compound called 18-methoxyquinidine hydrochloride. It is a drug that is transformational with respect to the treatment of addiction and compulsive behaviors. It's actually a compound that reverses the underlying disease process associated with addiction, which is a dysregulation of dopamine in the midbrain. And the reason why it's such a potentially transformational drug is that no other compound has been shown to work in all types of addiction as well as compulsive behaviors. So we have animal model data, the animal models are extremely good, that show that the drug not only works in opiate addiction, but it also works in cocaine addiction. Not only does it work in nicotine, but it also works in methamphetamine. And not only does it work in substance abuse, but it also works in compulsive eating disorders. So we think we have a target that goes to the absolute root cause of addiction and compulsive behavior.
And the product was a product that was it's a repurposed drug?
No, this is a new chemical entity.
Right.
It's derived from a library of compounds that were created upon examination of a natural compound known as ibogaine, which was shown to have potent anti-addictive effects, but it also happens to be a very potent hallucinogen. So it's a drug that is on Schedule 1, meaning that it is believed to have no medicinal value whatsoever. And our inventors, Stan Glick at Albany Medical College and Martin Kuna at the University of Vermont, synthesized a library of compounds based on the backbone of ibogaine, looking to create compounds that lack the hallucinogenic effects, but maintain the therapeutic effects with respect to addiction. And we believe that 18MC, which is the 15th compound in the library that was tested, is the most promising of the compounds coming out of that project.
And do we understand the link between hallucination and addiction? Is there?
Well, there is no link between hallucination and addiction, and it's interesting because there is I would call it a trend, but there is a movement within the medical community to some extent to re-examine hallucinogens as therapeutic compounds. There's some recent articles about looking at hallucinogens and relieving anxiety in patients that have, for example, fatal cancer, and they're facing death. And would hallucinogenic experiences help them to manage their anxiety? There have been efforts to look at hallucinogens in treating things like cluster headache disease. But the hallucinogenic experience itself probably is not related to the therapeutic component. And I think 18MC really demonstrates that. Right. There was a thought when ibogaine was being developed in the 60s for addiction, it was thought that it was the hallucinogenic experience that was important. Actually, the only thing you get from hallucinogenic experience of ibogaine is brain damage, because it actually is toxic to Purkinje cells in the brain. Okay. So not a good thing.
No, right.
Not a good thing.
Okay.
And we believe that was the basis for the hallucinogenic experience.
Right, bit of brain damage going on.
So 18MC actually doesn't do that, but it does have this therapeutic mechanism of resetting dopamine regulation in the pleasure centers of the brain back to normal. Because in addiction, what's happened is you've you've taken your normal dopamine regulation and completely messed that up, if you will, dysregulated it to the extent that you cannot return to normal and must continue using substances just to have some basis of baseline dopamine in the brain.
Okay, so let's just focus back on 18MC, because obviously you've been filing INDs. You filed them in Brazil and the US, I understand. Is that correct?
Mm-hmm. Correct.
So in terms of its therapeutic, how you envisage the therapy operating here, are you talking about a short-term dosage for patients, or this is something they themselves have to take for prolonged periods of time?
One of the things about addiction and the problem with treating addiction is less getting people off the substance, which is something that we believe 18MC will be very useful for.
Sure.
So much as keeping them off. The recidivism rates are extremely high in the treatment of addiction, and regardless of statistics that you look at, for example, if you look at someone that has been into rehabilitation or treatment center programs, the average number of times they go through one of those programs before they achieve 5 years of sobriety or substance-free behavior is actually 6 programs. So the recidivism is really the big problem. And the recidivism is a result of drug craving or substance craving. The substance craving is being driven by this dopamine dysregulation in the brain and environmental cues that trigger the brain to eliminate dopamine in the pleasure centers, which then creates the craving behavior that makes you be in a room full of smokers and suddenly want a cigarette, even though it's been 3 years since the last time you had a cigarette. Sure. Or be in a bar, for example, and want a drink, even though it's been 6 months since you had your last drink and you know you shouldn't be drinking. The other thing that's important about this is all this activity happens in the midbrain, and if you know a little bit about neurobiology, the midbrain is that flight or fight mechanism. It's actually designed to override our rational thought, so we don't stand there thinking about whether or not the mammoth is going to run us down or the saber-toothed tiger is going to eat us. We run from it or we fight it to prevent our own death. It's a survival mechanism. So what I tell people is this is not willpower. This is actually biology. And if something mechanism in the brain, the midbrain, says it wants something or you should do something, for example, go find cocaine, go get a drink, go have a cigarette. Doesn't matter what you're thinking. Yeah. I shouldn't do that. I know better. I know it's not good for me.
So the
next thing you know, the cigarette's in your hand, the drink's in your hand, or the cocaine's going in your nose.
Sure. Okay.
Completely overrides reason.
Right. So let's go back to the clinical development program. What you envisage that doing. So, is there a specific addiction that you're going for in your clinical strategy?
Initially, we're looking at cocaine, and there's 2 reasons for that. First of all, nothing that's approved to treat substance abuse in the United States is approved to treat stimulants, and cocaine falls in the stimulant category. So there's no approved treatment for cocaine abuse or methamphetamine or any other stimulant. Secondly, because of that, we've been able to get a very large amount of funding through our National Institute on Drug Abuse. And we received initially a $6.8 million grant to do the IND enabling work. But when we go into the clinic and continue to have additional support from NIDA, it will be in cocaine patients. So we will initially be working in cocaine patients. NIDA have set the bar rather high for us because people have failed over and over again to come up with a therapeutic for cocaine.
Right. And is that the same strategy in Brazil?
Brazil is different. 18MC is a rather unique drug. It has a different mechanism of action that makes it effective as an anti-leishmaniasis drug, which is a parasitic infection that can cause horrible skin lesions. In its visceral form, it's actually potentially fatal. It's a significant problem in Brazil, and because of that anti-leishmanial activity, we have partnered with a company in Brazil called Hebron Pharmaceutica for the development of 18MC for the treatment of leishmaniasis.
Specifically?
Specifically,
right.
Correct. But initially, all of your studies are in healthy, normal volunteers because you're trying to get baseline information about the compound. So everything that we learn down in Brazil in the phase 1 program is going to be relevant to what's going on in the U.S. Everything we learn in the U.S. phase 1 program is relevant to what's going on in Brazil. So we get a bit of leverage.
Yeah, sure. And when you talk about your company, right at the very beginning, you said you're actually therapeutic agnostic. In other words, I think you're looking at, you know, undervalued products, I think you said, which have other...
Yes, we look for opportunities to work in this preclinical through human proof of concept area. The reason is that we think it's the greatest value for money in terms of the development of new medicines. We have a great deal of expertise in that area, and we look for things that, for whatever reason, have struggled to find their way into preclinical, into human clinical trials. And if we see an avenue to leverage those programs and add that value, that's what we try to do. And then when we get to the point where we need to do large-scale pivotal clinical trials, we hope to have found strategic pharmaceutical partners for our programs.
Steve Hurst, thank you very much, Steve, for coming on the show.
Thank you.